When my mother-in-law passed away, my husband immediately said, "We're not going to the funeral." I was in shock. "How can you say that? That's your mother," I exclaimed, unable to believe my ears. But he just kept repeating, "Trust me, please." He didn't sleep all night, listening to every sound. And in the morning, the neighbor told me something that made my blood run cold. The phone rang like thunder out of a clear sky. John grabbed the receiver, and after listening to the caller, he went pale. His hand, gripping the phone, trembled. I stepped closer, trying to understand what had happened. John slowly put the receiver down on its cradle and turned to me. Terror was frozen in his eyes. "Mom is dead," he said in a hoarse voice. I gasped and pressed my hand to my mouth. Sabrina had always been a kind and caring mother-in-law. We often visited her and helped around the house. "And now we need to go immediately," I said, already thinking about what to take with us. But John suddenly grabbed me sharply by the shoulders. "No. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to the funeral." I was stunned by his statement. "What do you mean, not going?" "John, wake up. This is your mother." But my husband just shook his head. "Please, Mia, trust me. It has to be this way." All day John behaved extremely strangely. He methodically went around the house, checking the locks on doors and windows, drew all the curtains, even in the bathroom, and turned off the lights in every room except the bedroom. "Don't go near the windows," he said to me sternly. I paced the house like a caged animal, not understanding what was happening. I tried to talk to my husband, but he just waved me off. "I'll explain everything later. For now, just do as I say." At night, it became truly terrifying. John didn't go to sleep. He walked from room to room, listening to every rustle. At one point, I saw him pull a large kitchen knife from a drawer. "Why do you need that?" I asked, frightened. "Just in case," my husband replied grimly. I lay awake, jumping at every creak of the floorboards under John's feet. The darkest thoughts raced through my mind. What if something terrible had happened to my mother-in-law? Why was my husband so afraid? Who were we hiding from? In the morning, there was a quiet knock at the back door. I flinched, but John gestured for me to stay put. He cautiously opened the door and let in our neighbor, Olivia. "Oh my God, kids, you're alive?" she exclaimed, waving her hands. "Quiet." John snapped at her. Olivia covered her mouth with her hand in fear and whispered, "I know everything. It's horrible. Poor Sabrina." I grabbed the neighbor's hand. "What happened? Tell me." Olivia glanced around and moved closer. "It wasn't a heart attack. They strangled Sabrina." I felt the ground slip from under me. "Who?" I barely whispered. "Ben, her brother. Over the inheritance. He had been eyeing the house for a long time, and now—" Olivia sobbed. "Last night he came here, banging, shouting, demanding some documents. Luckily, you didn't answer the door." I looked at my husband in horror. Now his strange behavior made sense. We were trapped. The killer was looking for us. And we couldn't even go to the police. "What do we do?" I whispered. John hugged me tightly. "I don't know, my dear. But we'll figure something out. The main thing is to stay together." Olivia nervously peeked out the window. "Oh, it looks like a car is coming. A black Jeep. Isn't that yours?" John jumped back from the window. "No. Get out through the backyard quickly, and don't tell anyone." No sooner had the neighbor's door closed than there was a loud banging at the front door. "John! Mia! Open up! I know you're home." A rough male voice called. I pressed myself against my husband in terror. "Is that him, Ben?" John nodded. "If you don't open the door, I'll break it down." I need the house documents. You don't want the same thing to happen to you as happened to your mother. The banging on the door grew louder. It seemed that in a few more hits, it would give way. John grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the basement. There's a secret passage down there. We had to get out before he broke in. Stumbling, we descended the steep stairs. John moved some boxes aside, revealing a narrow crawl space. You go first, he whispered. I squeezed myself into the tight passage. From above came a cracking sound. It sounded like Ben was indeed breaking the door. My heart pounded like a drum. Was this the end? Were we really going to die here in the basement? Suddenly, I felt John tug at my leg. Back. He hissed. There's someone there. Looks like Ben isn't alone. We panicked and scurried around the basement, looking for a hiding spot. Heavy footsteps could already be heard from above. Here. John flung open the door of an old cabinet. We barely squeezed inside when the stairs creaked under someone's feet. I pressed my hand over my mouth, afraid even to breathe. Through a crack in the door, I could see two burly men with flashlights wandering the basement. No one's here, finally said one of them. Let's go upstairs. Maybe they hid in the attic. The footsteps faded. We stepped out of the cabinet with relief. What now? I whispered. John looked around and suddenly headed to the far corner of the basement. He moved some boxes aside and pulled out a shotgun. Where did you get that? I gasped. Stashed it a long time ago. Just in case, my husband replied grimly. Well, the time has come. John quickly loaded the shotgun. Listen to me carefully. We're going to try to get out through the crawl space. If it works, we run to the neighbors. If not, he fell silent, but I understood without words either we'd escape or we'd have to fight for our lives. We crawled back to the passage. John cautiously peeked outside. Looks clear, he whispered. I was ready to crawl when suddenly a deafening crash came from above. Something had been smashed in the house. Search everywhere. Ben's angry voice bellowed. The documents have to be here. Turn everything upside down, but find them. We exchanged a terrified glance. There was no time to think. We had to act immediately. John grabbed my hand firmly. On the count of 3, we get out and run as fast as we can. Ready? I nodded frantically. My heart was pounding in my throat. 1, 2. At that moment, something upstairs collapsed with a loud crash. 3. Mia and John, gasping for breath, tumbled out of the basement crawlspace into the weed-choked backyard. The cool night air stung their heated faces. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, and they froze, pressing themselves to the ground in fear. I think they didn't see us, John whispered, cautiously rising. He helped his wife up and looked around. We need to get out of here fast. We'll wait at the neighbors, and in the morning we'll decide what to do next. But they hadn't taken more than a few steps when a furious shout came from the house. They ran away. Search the yard. Mia grabbed her husband's hand in terror. What now? John pulled her decisively along. Into the forest. They won't find us in the dark. Tripping over roots and tangling in the tall grass, they ran toward the dark wall of trees at the edge of the property. Behind them, branches snapped. Their pursuers were combing the yard. The thick underbrush lashed at their faces and arms, but Mia and John kept pushing forward, deeper into the thicket. Branches caught on their clothes. The muddy ground squelched beneath their feet. Mia tripped over a root and almost fell, but her husband caught her. Quiet, he whispered. I think we lost them. They stopped, listening. The forest was filled with the usual nighttime sounds, the rustle of leaves, the hoot of an owl. No pursuit could be heard. John leaned back against the thick trunk of an oak tree and slowly slid to the ground. She sat down beside him, trembling from the cold and from the terror they had just endured. "What's going on, John? Why does your uncle want to kill us?" John let out a heavy sigh. "It's a long and terrible story. I hoped I'd never have to tell it." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "It all started 10 years ago when my father died. It turned out he left a large house and a considerable sum of money as an inheritance. But he wrote the will in such a way that only his wife, Sabrina, could manage everything. His brother Ben got only some old belongings and a small amount of cash. Uncle Ben has always been greedy," John continued. "He tried to contest the will, but failed. Then he began harassing my mother, demanding that she sell the house and give him half. She refused, saying it was a memory of our father. Ben didn't give up, sometimes threatening, sometimes begging, sometimes trying to guilt his sister. Sabrina held her ground, but with each passing year, it became harder for her. Mom would call me in tears," John recalled. "She said she was afraid for her life. I offered for her to move in with us, but she didn't want to leave her home. Last winter, Sabrina fell seriously ill. The doctors diagnosed pneumonia, but the treatment somehow didn't help. Now I realize it was probably my uncle's doing," John said grimly. "He must have been tampering with her medicine. Fortunately, my mother-in-law pulled through. After that, she firmly decided to rewrite the will in favor of John and Mia. Mom called me last night," John's voice trembled. "She said Ben was in the house, and she was scared. She only had time to shout, 'He's here.' The documents are safe. Protect Mia." Then there was some noise on the line, and the connection was cut. Mia pressed herself against her husband, feeling his body tremble. "Why didn't you tell me right away? We could have gone to the police." John shook his head. "You don't know my uncle. He has connections everywhere in the police, in the administration. He would have twisted everything to make it look like I killed my mother over the inheritance. We need irrefutable evidence." Suddenly, Mia's phone vibrated in her pocket. She jumped in surprise. For some reason, there was signal in the forest. "It's Olivia," Mia whispered, looking at the screen. "Don't answer," John hissed fearfully. It could be a trap. But Mia had already pressed the answer button. "Hello?" "Mia, thank God." The worried voice of the neighbor came through. "Are you alive? Where are you? Things are crazy here." Mia briefly explained the situation. Olivia only gasped and muttered, "My God, what a monster. And I was wondering why he was prowling around the yard." "So he's looking for you. Olivia, please, don't tell anyone," Mia begged. "We need a place to hide." Of course," the neighbor assured her. "Listen carefully. There's an old hunter's cabin beyond the forest. Go there, you'll be safe. I'll bring you food and clean clothes tomorrow." After thanking Olivia, Mia hung up. John shook his head skeptically. What if she's in on it with Ben? What if it's a trap? "No, I trust Olivia," Mia said firmly. "She's always treated us well. Let's go. We need to find that cabin before dawn." They struggled to their feet. The night forest seemed like a sinister labyrinth, full of invisible dangers. Somewhere in the distance, dogs barked again. "Move faster," John urged. "I think they're on our trail again." Tripping over roots and slipping on the wet grass, Mia and John pressed deeper into the thicket. Branches whipped their faces, and their clothes soaked with dew. Mia felt her legs going numb from exhaustion, but fear drove her forward. Finally, the forest began to thin. They emerged into a small clearing, at the center of which stood a dark, leaning wooden cabin. "I think this is it," John exhaled. The cabin door wasn't locked. Inside smelled damp and musty. Mia felt along the wall for a light switch, but nothing happened. "Probably no electricity," she guessed. John struck a match. In the dim light, they saw a roughly built table, a couple of wobbly stools, and a sagging cot in the corner. Bundles of dried herbs and old hunting trophies hung on the walls. Cozy, Mia nervously giggled, lowering herself onto the cot. The springs creaked pitifully. John sat down next to his wife and put his arms around her shoulders. "Forgive me," he said quietly. "I should have told you everything sooner. Maybe then we could have avoided this nightmare." Mia pressed closer to her husband. "You meant well. Now the main thing is to get out of this mess." She paused for a moment and added, "Have you thought that maybe your mother managed to hide the will?" Mention of some important documents made John thoughtful. "You know, you're right. Mom was very cautious. She probably took precautions in case something happened to her." "We need to go back to the house and search everything," Mia said firmly. "If we find the will, we can use it to prove Ben's guilt." John shook his head. "Too dangerous. Uncle has probably stationed his men there. We'd be caught before taking a single step." "Then I'll go alone," Mia declared. "He doesn't know me by face. I'll say I'm a new neighbor, asking for some water. Or I'll think of something else." "No!" John exclaimed. "I can't risk you like that. We'll figure something out, but together." At that moment, a branch snapped outside. Someone was approaching the cabin. Mia and John froze, straining to listen to the night silence. The footsteps grew closer. There was a cautious knock at the door. "Hey, anyone alive in there?" A hoarse male voice called. John grabbed a heavy stick from the floor and stood in front of Mia, shielding her. The door slowly opened. A tall, bearded man in a camouflage jacket stepped into the hunting cabin. John swung the stick, but the stranger raised his hands. "Quiet, quiet, don't make a noise. I'm a friend. Olivia sent me." Mia and John exchanged a glance. "How do we know you're not lying?" John asked warily, keeping the stick raised. The man sighed. "Olivia said to tell you that you like to drink tea with mint and honey." "Is that true?" Mia nodded. "Indeed, it was a habit of theirs. I'm Lucas, a forest ranger. Olivia asked me to help you get out of here." John reluctantly lowered the stick. "And how do you plan to help us?" Lucas looked around. "Now's not the time for talking. You're being hunted. We need to move. I know trails that will let us quietly leave the forest." Mia shivered. "Where will we go?" "We don't have money or documents. For now, we'll wait at my place," Lucas replied. "Then we'll decide what to do next." "So, are you coming?" Mia and John had no choice. They followed the ranger along a narrow path winding between the trees. Lucas moved confidently, like a cat in the dark. Mia kept tripping over roots, but John held her hand tightly. Soon the forest thinned, and they reached the edge. In the distance, city lights glimmered. "Careful now," Lucas whispered. "Ben's men could be around here." They crept along the forest's edge, staying in the shadows. Suddenly, Lucas froze and raised his hand. Ahead on the road, a black Jeep stood, two men smoking beside it. "Damn. Uncle Stugs," John whispered. Mia felt a chill run down her spine. Lucas gestured for them to retreat back into the forest. They cautiously stepped backward, trying not to make a sound. But suddenly, a branch cracked under Mia's foot. One of the men by the Jeep tensed. "Hey, did you hear that? Run!" Lucas shouted. They dashed into the thicket, pushing through bushes. Cries and pounding footsteps came from behind they had been spotted. The ranger led them through trails only he seemed to know. Branches lashed at their faces, and their feet slipped on wet grass. Mia gasped for air, but fear pushed her forward. Dogs were barking behind them. It seemed the pursuers had picked up their trail. Finally, they reached a small stream. "Follow me." Lucas shouted and plunged into the water. Mia and John followed. The cold water burned their skin, but they couldn't stop. They ran through the shallow water for about 100 meters and reached the other bank. "This way, we'll throw the dogs off the trail," Lucas explained. Soaking wet, they trudged on. Mia felt her toes going numb. John wrapped his arms around her shoulders, trying to warm her. Lucas muttered something to himself as he scanned the path ahead. Soon, a solitary house appeared at the edge of the forest. "We're here," Lucas exhaled. He took out a key and unlocked the door. "Quick, inside." The house was warm and dry. Lucas lit a kerosene lamp and handed Mia and John each a towel. "Here, dry off. I'll make some tea." While they recovered, Lucas busied himself by the stove. Soon, the aroma of herbal tea filled the room. "Drink," Lucas said, placing mugs in front of them. "Warm up and regain your strength." The hot drink truly helped. Mia felt a pleasant warmth spread through her body. She looked gratefully at the ranger. "Thank you. I don't know what we would have done without you." Lucas waved his hand dismissively. "Nonsense. I've known Olivia for ages, I couldn't say no. Besides, it's just wrong to have people killed in the forest." John nodded grimly. "But even here it's dangerous. Uncle won't stop until he finds us." Lucas scratched his beard. "Yeah, your situation isn't ideal. But I've got an idea. I know someone in the city, a man named Gregory Smith. He works at the morgue." Mia shivered. "At the morgue?" "Yeah," Lucas nodded. "Yesterday he complained to me that some rich guy bribed him to cover up a murder. Just like in your case." John leaned forward. "So maybe this is our chance?" "If the doctor gives testimony." Lucas shook his head. "It's not that simple. Gregory is afraid he'll be killed if he speaks out. But it's worth a try. I'll take you to him in the morning." The night passed restlessly. Mia woke at every sound, imagining Ben's men breaking down the door. But Lucas reassured them that they were safe here. At dawn, the ranger woke them. "It's time. The sooner we leave, the lower the chance of running into Ben's patrols." They climbed into Lucas's old truck and set off. Mia nervously looked around, expecting the black jeep of their pursuers at any moment, but the road was empty. The city morgue greeted them with oppressive silence. At the entrance, a short, balding man with darting eyes waited. "You're from Lucas?" he whispered. "Quick, inside, before anyone sees." The cool corridor smelled of formalin. Mia grimaced but composed herself. There was no time for squeamishness. Gregory nervously fiddled with his coat. "I understand you're relatives of the woman who—" "Yes," John nodded. "That's my mother, Sabrina." "Doctor, is it true that she was killed?" Gregory paled. I can't. They'll." He looked around the door in panic. Mia gently took his hand. "Doctor, please. We know you're scared, but if you don't help, the killer will remain free. And who knows who will be next?" Gregory let out a heavy sigh. "All right. Yes, she was strangled. I found marks on her neck. But I was paid to write in the report that it was a heart attack." John clenched his fists. "Who paid?" "Ben," the doctor nodded. "He threatened me, if I refused, I'd be next. And I have a family, children." Mia asked, "Doctor, is there any way to get the real report? Or at least a copy?" Gregory hesitated. "Formally, I'm not allowed. But I still have photos of the body. I always take pictures for myself, just in case." He went to a cabinet and pulled out a folder. "Here, look. You can clearly see the marks of strangulation." John and Mia leaned over the photographs. Nausea rose in their throats at what they saw, but they forced themselves to study the images carefully. "This is clear proof of murder," John said. Why didn't you go to the police? Gregory gave a bitter smile. What's the point? The local officer is in cahoots with Ben. He destroyed all of Sabrina's reports of threats. Mia thought for a moment. Then we need to go higher. To the state authorities or even the capital. At that moment, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Gregory grabbed the folder in a panic. Quick, get out. If they catch us together, they'll. But it was too late. The door swung open, revealing a hefty man in a police officer's uniform. Well, well. He drawled with a smirk. Look who we have here. The nephew shows up. I was wondering where you disappeared to. John stepped in front of Mia, shielding her. Hello, Mr. Brown. We came to say goodbye to my mother. Brown laughed. Oh, sure. Say your goodbyes. Uncle Ben has been looking everywhere for you. He was furious when you escaped. Mia felt a chill run down her spine. They were trapped. Brown would call for backup and they'd be caught. Something had to be done and quickly. Mia frantically thought of a way out. Suddenly, inspiration struck. She stepped forward, looking the officer straight in the eyes. Officer Brown, did you know that your dear Ben is planning to set you up too? Brown frowned. What nonsense are you talking about, girl? Mia continued, her heart pounding wildly. We have proof of Sabrina's murder. And you know what's interesting? Ben mentions you everywhere as his accomplice. He claims you helped him forge documents and cover his tracks. The officer's face turned crimson. You're lying. You have no proof. Really? Mia feigned surprise. What about the video where Sabrina talks about the poisoning attempt? She directly mentions your involvement in Ben's schemes. It was a pure bluff, but Mia hoped it would work. Brown visibly tensed. What video? Where did John played along with his wife's act? Mom didn't trust you, Mr. Brown, so she recorded a video message and hid it with a notary in the neighboring town. We were just about to collect it. Brown paced the room nervously. Damn. That bastard Ben set me up. I told him, don't get involved in this dirty business. And he kept going on about the inheritance. Mia spoke gently. Listen, it's not too late to fix things. Help us get to the notary, and we'll say a good word for you. We'll tell them you cooperated with the investigation. The officer hesitated. It was clear he was scared and confused. Finally, he sighed heavily. Fine. Damn it. Let's go to this notary. But if you've deceived me. They left the morgue and got into Brown's patrol car. Mia gave the address of the notary's office in the neighboring town. The entire way, she silently prayed that their bluff wouldn't be exposed too soon. Notary Wright turned out to be an elderly, refined man with glasses. He eyed the odd group suspiciously, Mia and John looking bedraggled, accompanied by a grim officer. How can I help you? He asked cautiously. Mia stepped forward. Hello. We're here about Sabrina Butler's will. She said she left some documents with you. Wright frowned. And who exactly are you? I'm Sabrina's daughter-in-law, and this is her son, Mia said, gesturing to John. The notary carefully examined their passports, then nodded. Yes, Sabrina did leave a packet of documents with me. But she strictly forbade me from giving them to anyone except you two, and only in the event of her death. John swallowed hard. My mother. She died 2 days ago. Wright gasped. My God, what a tragedy. Please accept my condolences. He opened the safe and took out a bulky envelope. Here you go. Sabrina asked that this be delivered to you intact and safe. Mia took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, there was a will, some papers, and oh, miracle, a small flash drive. And what's this? Brown asked, nodding toward the flash drive. Wright shrugged. I have no idea. Sabrina said there's very important information on it. She asked me to keep it safe at all costs. With her heart pounding, Mia inserted the flash drive into the notary's computer. Sabrina's face appeared on the screen, gaunt, with dark circles under her eyes, but determined. "Hello, my dears," she said. "If you're watching this video, it means I'm no longer alive. I'm recording this message because I fear for my life. My brother Ben." Sabrina went on to describe in detail how Ben had threatened her, demanded she rewrite her will, and a year ago had even tried to poison her by putting rat poison in her tea. "I have evidence," she continued. "I saved samples of the poisoned tea and recordings of our conversations. All of it is hidden in a secret compartment in the attic behind the old chest." "Son, you know where it is." John nodded. He did indeed remember that chest from his childhood. "I didn't go to the police," Sabrina continued, "because Ben bragged about his connections. He said the local officer, Brown, would clean everything up for him, but I couldn't stay silent any longer. John, Mia, be careful. Ben will stop at nothing. Take care of each other. I love you." The video ended. A heavy silence fell over the room. Brown turned pale and slumped into a chair. "That's your proof," Mia said quietly. "What will you do now, officer?" Brown buried his face in his hands. "Damn. What have I gotten myself into? Ben set me up. I had no idea about the poisoning." John smirked darkly. "Well, yes, you were just helping to cover up a murder. No big deal." The officer flinched. "Listen, I didn't want to get involved. Ben said we just needed to scare the old woman into giving up the house. I never imagined it would come to murder." Mia shook her head. "So what now? Are you ready to testify against Ben?" Brown hesitated. "I don't know. He'll ruin me. He has connections in the region, in the prosecutor's office. But we have this video," John reminded him. "And the morgue doctor's testimony. Plus the evidence in the attic. Who do you think they'll believe? You or the murderer?" The officer sighed heavily. "All right, I'll testify. But you have to put in a good word for me. Say I helped the investigation." Mia nodded. "Fine. Now we need to rush home before Ben reaches the secret hiding spot in the attic." They left the office and got into the car. Brown drove at top speed, breaking every rule. Mia clutched the folder with the documents and the flash drive tightly, their only hope for justice. As they approached the house, they saw flames. John paled. "No. Could we be too late?" But it wasn't their house on fire, it was the neighbor's shed. A black Jeep stood by the gate, and Ben strolled nearby with two thugs. Brown slowed around the corner. "What do we do?" Mia opened the door decisively. "I'll go and say I found the will. You call for backup from the region and be ready." John grabbed her hand. "Are you crazy? He'll kill you." "We have no choice," Mia shook her head. "We need to buy time until the police arrive and prevent him from reaching the evidence in the attic." She kissed her husband and stepped out of the car. Ben noticed her and smirked. "Well, dear niece finally decided to show up. So, did you bring what I asked for?" Mia tried to steady the trembling in her voice. "Yes, Uncle Ben, here's the will. But let's step aside and talk privately." Ben nodded to his thugs, who stepped back toward the car. He put his arm around Mia's shoulders, but she could feel the threat radiating from him. "Let's see it," he said, reaching for the folder. Mia took a step back. "First, tell me where John is." "You didn't touch him?" Ben smirked. "Don't worry. Your beloved husband is alive. For now. Now give me the papers and we'll part ways nicely." At that moment, the wail of sirens came from the road. Ben flinched. "What the hell?" Mia straightened up. That's for you, Uncle. Game over. We have all the evidence of Mother's murder. Ben's face twisted with rage. He drew his gun. You little brat. Thought you could outsmart me? But before he could aim at Mia, Rick Brown's car came flying around the corner. The officer jumped out while it was still moving and pointed his service pistol at Ben. Freeze! Drop your weapon. Ben was stunned. Rick, what are you doing, idiot? We're in this together. Brown shook his head. Sorry, Ben, but I'm out of the game. I've had enough of your schemes. Ben's thugs reached for their weapons, but then 3 police cars with flashing lights came around the corner. Mia breathed a sigh of relief. Backup had arrived just in time. Ben was restrained and forced to the ground. His accomplices were also arrested. From the house, a disheveled John rushed out. It turned out he had been locked in the basement the entire time. While the police were processing the arrests, Mia and John went up to the attic. Behind the old chest, they indeed found a secret compartment, and inside was a box containing evidence against Ben. It's over, John exhaled, hugging his wife. Now he'll pay for everything. Mia pressed against her husband. Yes, dear, we did it, and now we can bury Mom properly. A few days later, they stood at the fresh grave in the city cemetery. Olivia, Lucas Lesnick, and other neighbors were there. Mia placed a bouquet of white roses, the mother-in-law's favorite flowers, on the mound. Rest in peace, Mom, John said quietly. We did everything you wanted. Justice has prevailed. Mia took her husband's hand. You know, your mother saved us even after her death. If it weren't for her foresight with the video and the evidence. John nodded. Yes, she was a wise woman. And most importantly, she loved us and believed in us until the very end. They stood a little longer by the grave and then slowly walked toward the exit. Ahead of them lay a new life, free from fear and threats, but with a bright memory of a loved one who had taught them to fight for the truth to the end. It's so peaceful here, the soul can rest. John said. Mia nodded. Yes, this place feels made for happiness. And we will be happy, won't we? She looked at her husband, and he smiled in response. The night was warm and starry. Mia and John sat on the porch for a long time, holding each other and gazing at the sky. Somewhere in the grass, crickets chirped. Life went on. The next morning was overcast and chilly. Mia shivered as she stepped onto the porch. John was already waiting by the car. Today, they were heading to the regional center for another interrogation. The investigation was in full swing, and each day brought new details of the horrific case. Ready? John asked, opening the door. Mia nodded and got into the car. She felt drained, like a squeezed lemon. Endless testimonies, face-to-face confrontations, identifications. It seemed this nightmare would never end. They drove in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside the window, bleak autumn landscapes passed, bare trees, fields shrouded in mist. Suddenly, Mia flinched. A car with flashing lights rushed toward them. I wonder what they're rushing to this time, she murmured. John shrugged. Who knows? Maybe another crime. He was silent for a moment, then added, You know, sometimes I think, is the whole world really full of scum like Ben? Is there nothing but evil around? Mia gently touched his hand. No, darling, there are good people too. Remember Olivia, Lucas? They helped us, risking themselves. John nodded. Yes, you're right. It's just that sometimes it all hits hard. Inside the police station, the usual bustle reigned. People in uniforms and plain clothes scurried back and forth. Phones rang, typewriters clattered. Mia and John went up to the 3rd floor, where the investigator's office was located. He greeted them at the door, neat and serious as always. Come in, he said. I have news for you. They sat around the desk, covered in piles of papers. Officer Foster took out a folder. Here's the situation. Yesterday we detained Officer Brown. He tried to flee on a bus to a neighboring district. Mia gasped. Is it really over? Now he'll confess everything? The investigator shook his head. It's not that simple. A suitcase with a large sum of money was found with Ricky clearly a bribe from Ben for his silence. But Brown himself claims he knew nothing about the murder. He says he thought he was just helping with some real estate schemes. John slammed his fist on the table. He's lying. He knew exactly what he was getting into. Foster frowned. I understand your feelings, but we need irrefutable evidence of his involvement. Right now, there's not enough proof. Mia said thoughtfully. What if? You know, Sabrina once mentioned she installed cameras in the house. She said it was for security. Maybe there's still a recording? Foster's eyes lit up. That's interesting. Why didn't you say so before? John shrugged apologetically. To be honest, I thought Mom was joking. She's been a little paranoid lately. The investigator stood up decisively. We need to check the house immediately. If there really are recordings, they could be key evidence. He picked up the phone. Hello, Gregory? Assemble the team immediately. We're heading to the crime scene. An hour later, they were at Sabrina's house. The investigators methodically examined every corner, searching for hidden cameras. Mia paced nervously in the living room, glancing at the clock from time to time. Suddenly, a shout came from the bedroom. Found it! Everyone rushed in. A young officer was holding a tiny device, cleverly disguised as a button on an old robe. Look, he said. There's a whole system, cameras in every room, and the footage is recorded on a hard drive hidden in the ventilation. Foster carefully removed the hard drive. Excellent work. Take this to the lab immediately. Let's see what's been recorded. Mia and John exchanged glances. Could they finally learn the whole truth? The lab was tense and silent. Everyone held their breath as a specialist loaded the data from the drive onto a computer screen. Suddenly, the image flickered, revealing Sabrina's living room. On the footage, an elderly woman sat in a chair, nervously fidgeting with a handkerchief. Ben entered the room, disheveled, with wild eyes. Well, sister, made up your mind, he growled. Give me the house willingly, or I'll have to take action. Sabrina lifted her head. Never. This is my husband's house, John's father. I won't let you take it. Ben grabbed her by the shoulders. You old fool, you know I never let go of what's mine. Either you sign the papers, or... At that moment, Officer Brown entered the room. Hey, take it easy, he said. We agreed no violence. Ben waved him off. Shut your mouth. That which will ruin us. We have to finish this with her. Sabrina jumped up. I recorded everything and sent it to the notary. If anything happens to me, the truth will come out. Ben's face turned purple with rage. He lunged at the woman and grabbed her by the throat. Brown moved as if to help, but froze in hesitation. Watching what happened next was unbearable. She turned away, burying her face in her husband's shoulder. John held her tightly, barely restraining his own tears. When the recording ended, a heavy silence filled the room. Foster was the first to regain his composure. There it is. Irrefutable evidence. Now those scoundrels can't get away. He turned to the officers. Detain Brown immediately and increase security around Ben. He's definitely getting life now. The following days passed in a haze: interrogations, confrontations, paperwork. Cornered, Ben confessed to everything. Brown also decided to cooperate with the investigation in hopes of a reduced sentence. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. Mia held her husband's hand tightly as they listened to the verdict. Ben Butler is found guilty of the murder of Sabrina Butler and is sentenced to life imprisonment. Officer Brown is found guilty of aiding and abetting the murder and is sentenced to 10 years in prison. Exiting the courthouse, Mia took a deep breath. It felt as if a tremendous weight had lifted from her shoulders. "It's over," she whispered. "We won." John embraced her. "Yes, darling, now we can start living again." The next day, they were finally able to bury Sabrina properly. The entire town seemed to have gathered at the cemetery. People brought flowers and spoke kind words about the deceased. Mia placed a bouquet of white roses, the favorite flowers of her mother-in-law, on the grave. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything, for love, for care, and for protecting us even after death." That evening, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. John said thoughtfully, "You know, Mom was right." "Remember the scene?" "I remember," Mia replied. "She said in that video, take care of each other. Without our love, our trust, we wouldn't have made it." Mia nodded. "Yes. And she also taught us to never give up, to fight for the truth to the very end." She paused and added, "Do you think maybe we should stay here, continue your mother's work, help people?" John smiled. "You know, that's a great idea. I think Mom would be happy." He kissed his wife. "Let's start a new life together." They sat there, holding each other, watching the first stars appear over the town. Many challenges lay ahead, but they knew they could face anything together. Now, they had not only their love for each other but also the bright memory of a woman who had taught them never to give up. Yes,